I wasn't supposed to be home that night. My flight from Dallas landed 3 hours earlier than planned. Client bailed last minute on our presentation. I figured I'd skip the hotel and drive straight back to Austin. Didn't text Mia. I thought I'd surprise her. Maybe bring home takeout from that Thai place she liked, the one with the coconut soup she always said reminded her of our honeymoon. As I pulled onto our street, I remember how normal everything looked. The townhouse, lit just enough to suggest someone was home. Porch light on, curtains drawn, nothing out of place. But still I felt off. You know that gut-deep pull? Like something is wrong, but your brain hasn't caught up yet? I parked in the driveway and cut the engine. That's when I noticed it, the faint flicker of warm light glowing through the upstairs window. It wasn't bright like a TV or lamp. It was softer like candlelight. That would have been romantic, if I'd been expected. A cold edge crept down my spine. I tried to brush it off. Maybe Mia had lit a candle in the bedroom to unwind. She'd been stressed lately. Work deadlines, her boss breathing down her neck. Maybe she was just relaxing. Maybe she was alone. But the doubt was already in me. Quiet. Persistent. I grabbed my overnight bag from the back seat and made my way to the door. The front lock clicked easily. She hadn't set the deadbolt. That struck me as odd. Mia always double-locked the door at night. Always. As I stepped inside, the first thing that hit me was the smell. Why? Not the usual cheap red we kept around for spaghetti nights. This was something else, something fruity, rich, layered. Something we didn't own. Something we couldn't afford on a random Tuesday. My eyes adjusted to the dim light, and I noticed the flicker wasn't just coming from the bedroom. Candles. There were 3 of them, 2 on the staircase wall sconces and 1 on the entryway table. All lit. All fresh. She'd never done that for me. Not once in the 7 years we'd been married. I set my bag down as quietly as I could and stood still, listening. The whole house had this unnatural stillness to it. Too quiet for someone who was just relaxing. Then, faintly, I heard it. A laugh. Not loud. But not Mia's usual kind of laugh either. It was softer. Intentional. And then came the voice. A man's voice. Deep. Confident. Too relaxed to be a first-time guest. Came from upstairs. I didn't move. Couldn't. I stood at the bottom of the stairs, heart pounding so hard I could hear it in my ears. I thought about calling her name, about pretending I had just walked in and wasn't hearing what I thought I was. But I didn't. Something about the sound of that voice upstairs, so casual, so comfortable, told me I needed to see for myself before I said a word. So I started up the steps. Each footfall felt heavier than the last. The candlelight grew brighter as I neared the bedroom. I stopped just short of the top stair, where I had a clear view through the cracked open door. She didn't see me at first. Mia was standing by the dresser in that silk robe I didn't recognize. Her hair was up, like she'd been freshly showered. There was a glass in her hand. She was smiling. Sitting on the edge of the bed, facing her, was a man. Mid-30s maybe, clean-cut, wearing a shirt with the sleeves rolled up. I didn't recognize him, but something about the way he looked at her, like they shared some private joke, made my stomach twist. 2 crystal glasses sat on the nightstand, one half full, the other with lipstick smudged on the rim. The same lipstick Mia was wearing. And there was more. The music. A soft jazz track playing from her Bluetooth speaker. The scent of vanilla and wine and something else, her perfume. Not her usual scent. This one was richer, expensive. It wrapped around the room like a net. I watched her touch his knee, just for a second. That was enough. I stepped forward, my hand brushing the wall as I cleared my throat, loud enough to be heard. The reaction was instant. Mia spun around, her eyes going wide. The man straightened up like a kid caught raiding the liquor cabinet. The silence between the 3 of us was suffocating. "Ethan," she said, breathless. "You're early." I didn't say anything. She quickly stepped in front of the man, as if to shield him from my view. This is Derek. From work. We were just going over a campaign brief. He stopped by to help with a pitch I have tomorrow. That's all." She was talking fast. Too fast. Derek stood awkwardly, wine glass still in hand. Yeah, Ethan, right? Nice to meet you, man. He offered a handshake. I looked at his hand but didn't move. Mia glanced at me, then back at Derek. Maybe you should go. He looked relieved. Sure. I'll call you later about the presentation. Mia gave him a quick nod, avoiding my eyes. He passed by me slowly, careful not to touch me. As he reached the stairs, I heard him pick up his jacket and keys. A minute later, the door shut. Then it was just me and her. We stood in silence for what felt like hours. She was trying to read my face, but I gave her nothing. My mind was racing. Everything about the scene was wrong. 2 glasses, a man in our bedroom, candles, perfume, music. None of it fit the story she was trying to sell me. I was going to tell you, she said finally, about the campaign. I didn't know you'd be home tonight. You lit candles, I said quietly. She blinked. What? This whole setup, I said, gesturing around the room. The candles, the wine, the music. You don't do that for your coworkers. You don't even do that for me. Her face tightened. You're overreacting. I almost laughed. Am I? She crossed her arms. So what, you think I'm cheating on you? That's what this is? I didn't answer, because the truth was I didn't know yet. Not for sure. But every instinct in my body was screaming that something was wrong. This wasn't just a coworker stopping by to talk business. You came back early and now you're making assumptions, she said, voice rising. That's not fair. I looked down at the glasses, the robe, the wine bottle. It wasn't even opened all the way, just enough for 2 glasses. No corkscrew in sight. He brought it. She didn't just happen to open that bottle. I think I'm just going to get some air, I said, already turning toward the stairs. She didn't stop me. As I stepped outside, the night air hit me like a wall. I leaned against the porch rail, trying to slow my thoughts. My mind kept playing it all back on a loop, her voice, the wine, his hand on her knee. Maybe it was nothing. Maybe I had walked into the most poorly timed business meeting in history. But I didn't believe that. Not really. Something in my marriage had shifted. And no matter how much she tried to explain it away, I'd felt it in my bones the second I stepped through the door. Whatever this was, it wasn't harmless. Not anymore. The next morning, I woke up on the couch with a knot in my back and a heavier one in my chest. I hadn't planned to sleep there. I don't even remember lying down. After I stepped out the night before, I walked the block aimlessly for over an hour, looping the neighborhood like a man who couldn't face going home. Eventually, I made my way back inside without a word. Mia was already in bed. The candles were gone. The glasses washed. The only proof that anything happened was still pounding in my head. And the thing was, I wanted to believe her. I wanted to believe that Derek was just a colleague, that it was innocent, that I had jumped to conclusions because I showed up unannounced and found something out of context. But the truth doesn't disappear just because you want it to. It lingers, clinging to the edges of your mind, whispering louder every time you try to silence it. That morning, while stirring cream into my coffee, I found myself replaying everything. Not just last night, but the months leading up to it. All the things I'd brushed off. All the moments I had felt that gut level something's wrong, and talked myself out of it. It started with the boxing classes. That was maybe 6 months ago. Mia had never been into fitness. She used to joke that running was only worth it if something was chasing her. Then out of nowhere, she signed up for this boutique boxing gym downtown. Said it helped with stress. At first, I thought it was great. New hobbies were healthy, but the timing was always odd. Late evenings. Some nights she wouldn't get home until after 10. She claimed the gym had limited class slots. Then came the clothes. Mia had always had great taste, but this was different. She started buying pieces I'd never seen her wear before. Stylish, expensive things. Form-fitting dresses, heels that screamed for attention, lingerie that stayed buried in drawers. She brushed it off as updating her look for work. Said her boss was pushing for a more polished image. I believed her. Why wouldn't I? I even remember the perfume. Came in a white bottle with gold trim, and it cost more than my monthly gas bill. I found the receipt by accident while cleaning out the car. She'd never worn anything like it before. When I asked about it, she smiled and said, "Thought I'd try something new. Do you like it?" I had said yes, but I remember wondering who she really bought it for. Her phone habits changed too. That one was impossible to ignore. She used to leave her phone on the counter, screen up, no password. But suddenly it was always in her hand, face down. Notifications came in constantly. Soft dings and buzzes every few minutes. And every time they did, her eyes lit up like she was waiting for something. When I asked about it, she said it was just work. Group chats, campaign deadlines, nothing interesting. But her smile said otherwise. The worst part? I believed her. Or maybe I wanted to. Either way, I didn't press. I told myself I was being paranoid. That people change, that she was just growing. Maybe I was the one falling behind. Then there were the meetings. The emergency strategy huddles that seemed to pop up more and more. Nights when she was supposed to be home for dinner but called at the last second to say she was staying late. Once, she didn't come back until after midnight. I was half asleep on the couch when she walked in, smelling like wine and someone else's cologne. That night stands out in my memory. I asked her if she'd gone out after the meeting. She laughed. "Of course not. You think I'd be out at a bar without telling you?" I said no. I didn't think that. I remember her hugging me, planting a kiss on my cheek, and saying, "You've got nothing to worry about, babe." And I believed that too. But the one thing that snapped into place now, the one detail that hit like a slap, was the tracker. I had installed the GPS app on her car a year ago after she locked her keys in it downtown. It wasn't for spying. It was a convenience thing. But a few months ago, I remember pulling it up by accident when I was updating the app. I saw her car had been parked off a side road near Lake Travis for nearly 2 hours that Thursday night. She said she was stuck in traffic. There's nothing out there. Just a few secluded vacation cabins, mostly used in the summer. When I brought it up, she said she'd pulled over to take a walk, that she was overwhelmed and needed fresh air, that she didn't want to worry me. I nodded, kissed her forehead, and let it go. Now I saw how neatly all the lies were stacked. I sat there at the kitchen table, staring at my coffee like it held answers. Every new realization felt like a punch to the ribs. Not because I hadn't noticed, but because I had. Every single sign had passed through me like a shiver I refused to acknowledge. And now that I was letting myself see it, it all fit too perfectly to ignore. Mia came downstairs around 8. She looked tired, wrapped in a robe, hair slightly damp. Her expression was careful, neutral, like someone walking into a courtroom without knowing which side the judge was on. "Hey," she said, pouring herself a cup of coffee. "Didn't expect to see you up this early." I didn't respond. I watched her closely as she added almond milk and stirred. Her hands were steady, practiced. She finally glanced up. "Look, about last night. I know it looked weird." I didn't speak. "We were just working. That's it. I didn't know you were coming home, or I would've." "Would've what?" I asked finally. She blinked. "Would've done it somewhere else?" Her lips parted, stunned. Then she shook her head. "Ethan, come on." "I'm just saying," I said calmly. "If it's all so innocent, why the wine? The music? The candles?" She sighed, already annoyed. "Because I was stressed. It was a long day, and I lit candles and opened a bottle. And Derek offered to help. That's it." "Why was he in our bedroom?" "We needed space to lay out the campaign boards. Our dining room is bigger." She didn't answer. I stood slowly. "Mia, I don't know what this is, but if you want me to believe you, you need to stop insulting my intelligence." Her face hardened. "So what? You think I'm cheating on you now? That's where your head's at?" I didn't answer. I didn't need to. The silence between us stretched until she finally picked up her mug and walked into the living room. That was when it really hit me. This wasn't just a single lie or a bad decision. This was a pattern. A slow erosion of trust I'd watched happen in real time and refused to name. Mia hadn't changed overnight. She'd been drifting for months, slipping into the secret world one excuse at a time, one silent night at a time. And I had helped her, by staying quiet, by not asking, by loving her so much that I chose blindness over conflict. I stood in our kitchen, the same place we once danced barefoot to bad playlists while cooking pasta, and felt like a stranger in my own home. Every chair, every countertop, every little note she'd ever left on the fridge now felt like it belonged to someone else. Some other version of us that only existed in photographs. The truth was unavoidable now. I wasn't imagining things. And whatever was happening behind the scenes, it had been happening for a while. This wasn't paranoia. It was memory. And everything I remembered now felt like a warning I had ignored. I wish I could say I was still in denial, that I hadn't fully accepted it yet, that some part of me was holding out hope that I was just wrong, paranoid, damaged by my own imagination. But by the time Mia left for her company's anniversary dinner, there was no illusion left. I knew something was happening. I just didn't know how deep it went. She told me about the dinner a week prior. Said it was a formal thing at a hotel downtown. Black tie. No spouses invited. No plus ones. I asked casually, like I didn't care. It's just for the core team, she said, barely looking up from her phone. Internal only. I nodded. Didn't argue. But in that moment, I knew I was going. Not with her. Not as her date. As a witness. I waited until the night of the event. Let her get ready without saying a word. Watched as she curled her hair in the bathroom mirror, humming along to music like it was any other Thursday. Her dress was navy, low-cut, elegant. The kind of thing she only ever wore to weddings or charity galas. She spent nearly an hour on her makeup. When I offered to call her a car, she declined. I'll just Uber, she said with a shrug. Easier that way, right? As soon as she left, I threw on jeans and a button-down and headed out 10 minutes behind her. I didn't follow her Uber, too risky. Instead, I parked a block away from the hotel and circled the lobby on foot, waiting to spot her. It didn't take long. She stood near the bar in a small crowd, drink in hand, head tilted back in laughter. And there he was, Derek, right beside her, leaned in, hand resting on the back of her chair like it belonged there. They looked like a couple who'd been doing this for a while. Comfortable. Mate. At one point, she touched his chest, and he whispered something in her ear. She laughed again. Then I saw it. Her expression softened. The kind of softness you don't fake. Not with a coworker. She said something back, too low for me to hear, and he nodded. They both looked around once, then started walking together, side by side, toward the elevator hall. I followed from a distance, weaving through the crowd. They didn't head to the front elevators. They slipped behind a door labeled Service Access. She didn't even look over her shoulder. I stood outside that door for a full minute. I could hear the echo of my heartbeat in my ears. My hand was shaking. I didn't go in. There was no point. I walked out of the hotel and sat in my car for the next 2 hours, staring at the glowing sign over the valet station like it might burn a hole through the windshield. I didn't cry. I didn't scream. I didn't even grip the steering wheel the way people do in movies. I just sat there, numb, watching the night unfold like it didn't belong to me. At 1:14 a.m., I watched her exit through a side door, alone. Her lipstick was gone. She looked tired. She tapped on her phone and waited for an Uber, arms crossed. I ducked lower in my seat, but I don't think she would have seen me even if I stood on the hood. Her mind was elsewhere. That night, she came home quietly. I pretended to be asleep on the couch. She didn't speak, just crept up the stairs like a burglar returning from a job. The next morning, I checked her email. I still had access to an old tablet we rarely used, one she'd forgotten still synced to her cloud. She hadn't wiped it in months. Everything was still there, calendar invites, saved files, even her inbox. And sitting right at the top was a confirmation from the hotel. Room 542, reserved under her maiden name. My chest locked up. It wasn't even subtle. There was a receipt attached, timestamped at 9:32 p.m. She checked in less than 15 minutes after walking through that service door. I don't remember closing the tablet. I just remember standing in the middle of the living room, feeling the floor beneath me twist and shift like I was about to fall straight through it. So that was it. Not just a flirtation. Not just late nights at work or one drink too many. This was planned. Coordinated. She had booked a room. Lied about the guest list. Walked past me with perfume on and her phone tucked away, knowing exactly what she was going to do. I thought about confronting her right away, cornering her in the kitchen and throwing the receipt in her face. Demanding the truth, not the polished version, not the half-lies, but the raw, ugly truth. But something in me stopped. Maybe it was pride. Maybe survival. Instead, I waited. She came downstairs an hour later, fresh out of the shower, in leggings and a t-shirt, asking what I wanted for breakfast. I said nothing. Not because I was afraid, because I was watching her now, studying the way she moved through our house like it was still hers, the way she smiled at me like nothing had happened, like I hadn't stood 30 feet away and watched her disappear into a hotel elevator with another man. That smile made me sick. Over the next few days, I kept things normal, played the part, laughed when she made a joke, kissed her cheek goodnight, let her think nothing had changed. But everything had. Because now I knew. Not suspected. Not feared. Knew. She was cheating. And she was good at it. Later that week, she mentioned Derek by name, casually like she was testing me. He crushed the campaign pitch, she said. Honestly, I don't know what I'd do without him. I just nodded. But inside something snapped. I went to the bathroom, closed the door, and stared at myself in the mirror. I didn't recognize the man looking back. He looked tired. Not just physically, exhausted in a way that no sleep could fix. That night, I couldn't sit still. I kept walking from room to room, touching things, our wedding photo, the souvenir from our Italy trip, the shelf of books we picked out together. Every piece of our life suddenly felt cheap, like stage props, like she had performed this marriage while rehearsing another life behind the curtain. I pulled out my laptop and searched her name. Found social media accounts she hadn't told me about. New ones. One under a shortened version of her maiden name. Just a few photos, dinners, wine glasses, cryptic captions. Nothing explicit. But there was one that stopped me cold. A selfie. In the same navy dress. Same earrings. Her lips curled in a soft, sly smile. The caption? Some nights are just for you. No tags. No location. No explanation, but I knew who she meant. I looked up the timestamp. It was posted an hour after she checked into the hotel. She had stood there in that room and taken a photo. For him, to mark the moment. My fingers hovered over the keyboard for a long time. I didn't know what I was looking for anymore. Maybe proof of how long it had been going on. Maybe something to show that I hadn't been crazy all along. That every suspicion had been rooted in something real. But none of it mattered now. The moment she walked into that hotel, everything we'd built fractured. And no amount of explanations or excuses could glue it back together. The betrayal wasn't just physical. It was strategic, carefully orchestrated. She hadn't just crossed a line. She built a life on the other side of it. And now I was staring at the wreckage, wondering how long she'd planned to keep me in the dark. Wondering what other lies were still waiting to be uncovered. After the night at the hotel, something inside me shifted. I wasn't just heartbroken anymore. I was alert, sharpened by anger, steady with purpose. The betrayal wasn't hypothetical anymore. It wasn't some vague hunch I could ignore, drown out with rationalizations or the sound of her laughter. It was real now, tangible, and that changed everything. I stopped looking for reassurance. I started looking for proof. I didn't plan it like a detective in some movie. There were no voice recorders or hidden cameras. Just a quiet, methodical digging. I wanted to see how far the lie went. How many layers deep she'd buried the truth beneath carefully crafted excuses and practiced smiles. The first place I started was the old tablet. Mia never used it. We bought it years ago to stream movies on planes, but it had mostly become a digital junk drawer. Logged into her cloud accounts, barely touched since. She probably forgot it even existed, but it still had full sync access to her messages, files, even location history. All I had to do was unlock it and open the apps. What I found wasn't one mistake. It was a relationship. There were texts between her and Derek that went back 6 months. Maybe more. They weren't explicit. Not the kind that would scream infidelity to someone skimming. But they were full of inside jokes, late-night heart emojis, and phrases like, "Wish I could stay longer tonight," and "You always calm me down better than anyone." One thread stood out. Mia, 10:47 p.m. He's asleep on the couch. Again. I feel invisible lately. Derek, 10:49 p.m. Maybe it's time to stop pretending, babe. Mia, 10:50 p.m. I know. I just don't want to blow up everything. Not yet. I read that message 3 times. Not yet. That meant there was a timeline. Plan. She wasn't confused or caught off guard. She knew what she was doing. And the worst part? She was timing it, weighing her options. My chest tightened. On impulse, I went back and searched my name in her text archive. There were only 2 results. Both were to Derek. One said, "He thinks I'm at boxing again. Gonna shower so it smells right, lol." The other said, "If he finds out, I'll lose half the house. Not that he'd fight me on it, he's too kind for that." That one hit the hardest. She saw my kindness as a wee *p*n she could use against me. The next place I checked was our joint bank account. We each had our own personal credit cards, but we'd agreed years ago to keep the joint one active for groceries, bills, and anything we both use. Turned out, Mia had been using it for more than groceries. Over the past 3 months, there were multiple charges from boutique hotels and restaurants I'd never heard of. One was the same place from the company dinner night. Another was a beachfront in 2 hours south we had once talked about visiting someday. I checked the dates. One of them was our anniversary. I stared at the screen for a long time. It was hard to breathe. The receipts weren't vague. Each had room service orders, bar tabs, spa services for 2. She was celebrating with someone else. On the day we got married, I backed away from the computer, closed the lid, and just stood in the middle of the kitchen, fists clenched. I wasn't crying anymore. Couldn't. It was something worse than sadness. This icy, hollow ache that sat in the center of my chest like a brick. Then came the final piece. I hadn't planned to involve anyone else. But that changed when our neighbor, Danielle, stopped me outside one morning while I was hauling the trash out. She was always polite, maybe a little nosy in a harmless way. But that day, she looked hesitant, like she was holding something heavy she didn't want to carry anymore. "Ethan," she said slowly, "I hope you don't take this the wrong way, but is everything okay between you and Mia?" I blinked. "What do you mean?" She glanced around, then lowered her voice. "It's probably not my place to say anything, but I've seen a guy coming over here when you're gone. A few times, actually. Tall, glasses, real casual. Parks down the block and walks up like he's trying not to be seen. I didn't want to assume anything, but did you ever catch it on camera?" I asked, my voice calm but strained. Danielle looked surprised. "Actually, yeah. Our door cam catches part of your porch. I didn't even realize until I looked through the footage last week when we had a package go missing." She paused. "I can send it to you. Just promise me you'll be okay." I nodded. "Yeah, I will. Thank you." An hour later, the clips arrived. There were 3, all from the past month. Each one showed Derek walking up to our front door late in the evening, always after 9, always when I was out of town. In one of them, Mia opened the door barefoot in that same silk robe. She leaned into him, kissed him on the cheek. They stood in the doorway talking for a minute before he stepped inside. And the door closed behind them. That was it. No debate. No guessing. It wasn't an emotional affair. It wasn't just texts or flirtation. He had been in our house, our bedroom, wearing a smile like he belonged there. I downloaded everything, every text thread, every receipt, every clip. I labeled the folders, backed them up on a private drive, and stored a copy on a USB hidden inside a sock drawer. I wasn't entirely sure why. Maybe for leverage. Maybe for closure. But deep down, I think I just needed proof that I wasn't crazy. That my instincts had been right all along. That I hadn't imagined the distance or invented the coldness in her touch. Mia had built a secret life right under my nose. And I had let her. Not because I was stupid, but because I trusted her. And trust, it turns out, makes you blind to the obvious. It makes you rewrite facts to fit the version of the person you hope they are. The version I had been in love with for years. That version didn't exist anymore. Maybe she never did. The hardest part wasn't what I'd found. It was how easy it had been to find. All this time, I thought I was being paranoid. But the truth was sitting in plain sight. Emails, receipts, laughter in video clips. Derek wasn't a mystery man. He was practically a fixture in her new reality. They had nicknames, rituals, jokes about me. She had said I made her feel invisible. But all along, she was the one who had stopped seeing me. I took one last look at the footage, then closed the laptop. My heart didn't race anymore. I didn't feel like yelling. I didn't want to break things or scream into a pillow. I just felt done. Not defeated. Not even angry. Just hollow. Like the space inside me where our marriage used to live had finally caved in on itself. And all that was left was dust and evidence. There's a moment, right after the truth settles into your bones, where everything goes quiet. Not peaceful quiet. Not the kind that soothes. It's more like the sound gets S***ed out of the world. And even your thoughts come in echoes. That's what the next few days felt like. Not rage. Not sadness. Just silence. I didn't confront Mia. Not yet. After watching those videos, after reading those messages, something in me just cracked. But it wasn't a loud, explosive break. It was quiet, internal, like a window you didn't know was there had shattered behind a wall. You don't see the glass. You just feel the cold air pouring in. I stopped asking her questions. There was no point. Everything she could possibly say was already undermined by what I had in my possession. Texts, receipts, footage. And the worst part? She was still playing the role. Still smiling in the kitchen. Still asking me how my day was. Still kissing me goodnight like she didn't come home with someone else's scent on her skin just weeks ago. Maybe that's what broke me most. Not the cheating, but the performance. Because once you see it, once you realize someone's rehearsing affection, it changes everything. The little gestures stop feeling warm. They feel choreographed. Every hand on your shoulder feels like it's trying to hide a blade. Every "I love you" sounds like a script read too many times. I stopped sleeping in our bed. I told her it was back pain, which wasn't entirely a lie. The couch wasn't much better, but I couldn't lie next to her anymore without remembering the footage. Her opening the door in that robe. The way she leaned into him. The soft laughter echoing from the room I used to call ours. Sometimes she'd ask, "Are you okay?" And I'd nod. Because no wouldn't mean anything. She wouldn't understand the kind of broken I was. Or maybe she would, and that was worse. The house, which used to feel like home, started to feel like a stage. Like every photo on the wall was part of some elaborate prop setup. Even the wedding picture, us barefoot on the beach, sunlit and glowing, looked fake now. Like actors who didn't realize the script would eventually turn on them. I started spending more time in the garage. Mia thought I was working on some project. Truth was, I just needed somewhere the walls didn't whisper. I needed cold air, the smell of sawdust, silence that didn't pretend to care. I'd sit out there for hours doing nothing, just trying to make sense of how someone I loved could become a stranger wearing her face. One night, I found our old honeymoon album buried in a bin. I don't know why I opened it. Morbid curiosity, maybe. There we were, laughing in a hammock, snorkeling in water so blue it didn't look real, covered in sunburn and salt and joy. She had written a little note on the back of one photo. "I hope we always feel like this." I stared at that line for a long time. We didn't. And now I knew we never would again. I started to see everything differently. Every time she texted with a quick smile and turned her phone over, I saw the years peeling away. Every time she told me she was working late, I heard Derek's voice instead. Every time she hugged me, it felt like muscle memory, like a move she used to do out of love, but now just did to stay in character. And then came the anniversary, our 8th. She didn't forget. She made a dinner reservation, handed me a card, even put on the gold dress I once told her was my favorite. should have meant something. But all I could think about was the receipt from 3 months earlier. Room service for 2 at a boutique hotel, ordered under her maiden name. On the same date, our wedding date, she had been with him. While I waited at home, texting her happy anniversary, and lighting candles like an idiot, she had been lying next to him, laughing at his jokes, drinking champagne in a room I never saw. When she handed me the card at dinner, I didn't open it. I tucked it into my coat pocket and excused myself to the restroom. Then I walked out of the restaurant and drove home without her. That was the first real statement I made. Not loud, not angry, just gone. She called me 5 times, left 2 voicemails. The first was confusion. "Ethan, where did you go?" The second was a little more desperate. "Can we please just talk? You're scaring me." Scaring her. That word stuck with me. Like I was the threat. Like she hadn't already burned the house down and handed me the ashes with a shrug. When she got home that night, I was already in the guest room. I heard her pacing outside the door, knocking, then walking away, then coming back again. Eventually, the footsteps faded. The bedroom door creaked shut. The next morning, she acted like nothing happened. Made coffee. Asked if I wanted eggs. I said no. She didn't press. That's how we operated now, on silence and unspoken rules. Neither of us acknowledged what we both knew. I think part of her believed she was still getting away with it, that her version of the truth might still hold up. But the truth doesn't go away when you ignore it. It rots. It seeps into your bloodstream, poisons your mornings, stains your memories. That's what was happening to me. I was rotting from the inside out, sitting at the same table we used to plan vacations on, knowing she'd planned her affair in the same chair. I used to count time in milestones: wedding, first house, first trip to Europe. Now I counted it in lies. The first fake meeting. The first secret message. The first time she looked me in the eye and said she was just tired. I started writing things down. Not because I needed help remembering, but because I needed somewhere to put the anger that wasn't outward. A place to spill the thoughts I couldn't say aloud. Entry. She let him walk through the front door like I never existed. Entry. I used to worry about losing her. Now I worry about what version of her I've been living with. Entry. The worst part isn't that she lied.